Hey, good Saturday afternoon. Carl Rominger here, answering your legal questions on the air. 540-0580. So if you're out driving around, pull over before you get on your cell phone. That's the responsible thing to do. Or text me while you drive, whichever way you prefer to do it. Shane's like, well, you can't say that on the air. I can't? All right. Don't text and drive. 540-0580. Call in. We'll answer your legal questions here on the air. Also want to remind you, of course, weekendappointment.com is the website for the show. You can ask your questions on there, and we'll give you answers. Somebody just posted one. They had a question about their, my employer has a manager that has an anger problem towards all employees. Now, probably 1,000 people just said, wow, I know exactly what they're saying. They go on to say, she screams and shows threatening body language and facial language towards employees. It's affected my health issues, such as diabetes, heart trouble, as well as stress, and she wants to know if she works in a hostile work environment. And the answer is, yeah, you do work in a hostile work environment, but in Pennsylvania, you probably have no remedy. There's nothing that says a boss can't be a jerk or a bully as long as they don't do it for reasons that involve race, sex, age, or a protected class. So you can discriminate against your employees, you can be a jerk to your employees, and they probably don't have a recourse. Now, if you quit a job and it's for a necessitous and compelling reason, by the way, talk line number here is 540-0580. I'm reading a question off weekendappointment.com for you here. If you quit for a necessitous and compelling reason, then you might still be able to get unemployment. But that's sort of always at your own peril because the unemployment compensation referee is going to second-guess you, and usually you have to have tried to make it known to your employer. So for give you an example, if your direct manager is a complete jerk and you don't tell anybody about it and you say that's why I quit, you're probably not going to win that one. On the other hand, if you grieved it up through the corporate offices and they still don't change anything and you can prove later that they're a complete jerk, you're probably okay. Of course, as I was telling an employee a customer the other day, or client would be, who had an employer problem, said, well, oh yeah, I can prove it real easy. The other employees all saw it. And I said, well, the other employees, when they get to court, they sometimes kind of look at you, and then they look at your boss, which is their boss. They look back at you, and they go, I didn't really see that. I was kind of busy when they were having that spat over there, or, I had my back to the situation. I was stacking the mugs, and I didn't hear what actually happened. So put that in the back of your head. Anyhow, I'll answer that one online for you. That was by Love America. I'll answer that online for you. We'll look at it. But the answer is you do work in a hostile work environment, but not the one that's probably going to make a difference. Now, there are anti-bullying type laws out there being talked about with the idea of, putting employers in a position of having to treat everybody nicely. But what's nicely? I can't yell at my employees when they're late. I have to, oh, Shane, you were late today and you didn't show up on time, and I'm going to have to give you 2 demerits, and I still love you, and I still want to cuddle you and hold you and coddle you, but since you're my employee, I just want to make sure you know that you did something bad and we might have to fire you someday. I don't know how you're going to regulate what is abusive behavior versus what is good behavior in the workplace. One man's abuse is another person's constructive criticism. 540-0580. Mike, you're on the air.
Hey, let me ask you something. Is it a requirement? We got the upcoming elections here next week. Is it a requirement for a judgeship to obtain a judgeship, whether it's appointed or elected, that you be a lawyer?
Well, that's a good question. The answer is, in order to be a common pleas judge, a county-level judge, yes, same with Superior, Commonwealth, and Supreme Court. In order to be a district justice, or as they call them now, district judges, because we changed the name recently, or magistrates.
Whether it's a district judge appointed or elected?
They're elected, and they can be appointed if there's a vacancy and no election at the time, but they're generally elected, and they don't have to be lawyers.
They don't have to be.
That's correct.
A district judge does not have to be.
That is correct.
Okay. How about further up the line then?
That's the county-level judge, and they have to be.
They have to be lawyers too?
Yes.
Okay. Then we get into federal.
Federal judges, I don't think there's any requirement to be a federal judge except that you have to be appointed by the president and accepted by the Congress.
Okay.
Beyond that, I don't know what there is, but I can't imagine that there's been any federal judge who wasn't at least a lawyer or judge already.
Got You got that right. Okay, sir, I appreciate that.
All right, my friend.
Thank you.
Thank you. That's right. The judicial elections are coming up. Make sure you study the candidates carefully. I get so mad because everybody's like, well, I can't wait for the next presidential election. Well, why don't you actually pay attention to what's going on around you between now and then and realize that we have lots of township officials, up for election at any given point, county officials up for election in this primary, and judges up in this primary. I know, like in my county, Cumberland County, I think there's 8 of them running for 2 slots. So if you haven't registered to vote yet, it's a little late. But if you are registered to vote, you should take a look at who the various judges are. If you ever want to find out what I have to think, I'm not going to say it on the air because that wouldn't be fair to any one candidate. But if you want to come see me in my office, I'm happy to tell you what I think about anybody and everybody. 540-0580. Todd, you're on the air.
Yes, sir. I have a question about, I had a suspended license, but it was out of North Carolina. Like, I have a PA license.
Okay.
And I'm just wondering, do I need a lawyer? Like, it's been going on. It probably happened 6 months ago, and I've had continuances because I work out of state all the time. And the trial's coming up. I don't know. It's just a basic. It was a $130 fine for running a stop sign in the Outer Banks.
Okay.
And trying to figure out how to say this. I sent a check on a joint account that I had with my girlfriend. Sorry, I'm driving.
Yeah.
And it never. They don't take checks at this Outer Banks. They just send a form of payment. They don't take a check, and they also don't return you a letter saying that they did not accept it.
Oh, okay.
So whenever I got pulled over here back in September, it was by a state police officer, took my license, blah, blah, blah. I looked into it further. It was turned into a $500 fine in the Outer Banks. I paid it. I have the record of it. But I had never received a letter from PennDOT saying that my license was suspended.
Now,
okay, go ahead.
Are you living at an address, or were you staying at an address where your driver's license actually says is your address?
Yes, sir.
Okay, because PennDOT mail's not forwarded. That's usually the number one reason. Now, who suspended you? PennDOT has suspended you now for non-reporting?
PennDOT suspended me as a 12 of 10 for not reporting, I guess it would be.
Right.
The DMV in North Carolina sent them a request.
Gotcha.
To take my driver's
Did
license.
you get the North Carolina thing straightened up completely now?
Yes, I got it completely straightened out. And the only thing that I have as proof that I didn't know about it is I've switched insurance carriers 2 times in between that, and nothing came.
Right.
After that fact. It says active on my status.
And you have a hearing coming up here in Pennsylvania?
Yeah.
On driving under suspension because the trooper ran you and you were suspended.
Yeah, he had that little bar or whatever.
Well, the short answer is, you can certainly go there, explain your situation to the police officer, and he might be willing to cut you a break. Long and short of it, you got to be careful what you say because they still have to prove you knew you were suspended.
Okay.
Anything you say can and will be used against you in a court of law, specifically and especially if you say it to a police officer or in a court of law. So, with that in mind, my advice would be you don't want to fool around with something like this if you drive for a living. Come see me or a lawyer.
Okay.
All right?
All right, buddy. Thank you.
All right, brother.
Yeah.
540-0580. We get back from the break. We'll talk with Mike. Hey, welcome back. Carl Rominger here answering your legal questions. And I was going to tell you earlier, but it slipped my mind. We updated the law firm website. Zach from 717 Studios, which you'll be able to find their link on the bottom of our new website. It's RomingerLaw.com. His people worked hard with my people, and they put together this really nice website for us. So if you haven't seen it yet, go to RomingerLaw.com. You can link to it from Weekend Appointment, or you just type Carl with a K and Rominger into Google, and you'll find it. We got some pretty cool pictures up there. We're real happy with those. But if you need a website, really have a small business out there, bigger business, and you want somebody who's very professional, really knows what they're doing, it's 717 Studios, and they're linked on the bottom of our site. So I just want to throw that out there because he did such a nice job with it. I'm very proud of it, and I just want to let you know about it. So go to RomingerLaw.com and check out that new website. Mike, I promised you're up next. Hey, Mike.
Hey, hi, Mr. Rominger. How are you?
Good.
Good. Hey, I'm just driving home here, and I heard you talking about the other fellow was talking about justices. Some are attorneys, some are not, and so on and so forth. And you made a comment about federals, and it quickly brought to mind the one of the latest women who was appointed to the Supreme Court. And if I recall correctly, she had no judicial experience at all. And I was thinking she was an instructor, a professor of some sort. Was she an attorney?
Yeah, I think you're thinking of. You're gonna really test my brain here.
Me too.
Yeah, she was a litigator. Ruth Bader Ginsburg.
No, and now I'm talking about.
Sotomayor.
Sotomayor. Perhaps it was her. I'm thinking, but she was not. She'd never been a judge before.
In 1991, let's see, I'm pulled it up right here on the web. 91, okay. President Bush nominated her to U.S. District Court of the Southern District of New York from 92 to 98.
Okay.
And she was on the U.S. Court of Appeals from 98 till 2009. So Bush Sr. appointed her, and then it looks like our man Bill Clinton pushed her up the next bracket, and then Obama the next bracket. So she's originally appointed by a Republican.
Okay. Is this the one that was finally put on the Supreme Court by Obama?
Uh-huh.
Okay, and so that she was the last one, perhaps?
Yep.
Okay, well.
Go figure.
Well, very well, okay.
All right, thanks, man.
Thank you. Bye now.
Yeah, go figure that one. I always love that because you always see that the history of a lot of these judges is they're appointed by both sides. I mean, look at how John... Oh, you're thinking of Kagan. Is that who we're talking about? Oh, so that was Sotomayor, but he wants to talk about Kagan. Okay, we got Kagan. Law, government service, education. I don't think she was a law clerk to a judge. And she was a Harvard law school. So he's right. He's right. Well, there you go. Had the wrong one. Well, we thought it was Sotomayor, but it's Kagan. Can't keep up with all the new justices. Of course, I hope you guys realize this. You rarely look at U.S. Supreme Court cases in a daily law practice because what Pennsylvania courts have decided on things like custody and divorce quite often affect our rights a lot more than what the U.S. Supreme Court has said. Or when it comes to, for instance, your Miranda rights, we look at cases from the 60s. Steve.
Yes.
You got a custody question.
My granddaughter, a single mom, has split custody with her ex-boyfriend who is on SSI. He gives her money when he wants. What does the Pennsylvania or federal law work on the situation? What is her recourse?
Okay. So they have split custody.
Yes.
50-50?
Yes.
And which one's on disability?
He is.
He's on disability.
Yes.
And have they been to support? Have they gone to the child support court yet?
Yes.
Okay. Well, what did the courts order?
There was really no order.
Probably because there's no real income, right?
Right.
Well, that's the problem. I mean, if there's no income, there's no income. I mean, if it was an intact family with a disabled or handicapped person, there wouldn't be any income from that side either.
He gets money just for him.
He gets money for his son.
Separate.
Okay, and that probably gets paid for the benefit of the kid, and his duty is to spend that for the benefit of his child under the rules of whatever disability program he's under.
Right. But she's not entitled.
I don't think she's entitled to a portion of it if they have true split custody, no. Although that portion could be split between the two of them. I mean, I think that the support court could do that.
So then she needs to go to court for that then?
Yeah, but I thought she'd already been, you told me.
Well, no, it was a lawyer who made the decision between both of them.
They didn't actually go to support court.
No.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I think that there's an opportunity there to split up the child's portion of the disability benefit between the parents if they both have the child equally.
He had an attorney and she didn't.
Well, there you go. That's how that works.
Okay.
All right, my friend. I heard that. Yeah. See, Carl, what happened was I went and met with my ex-wife's attorney, and I signed all these documents, and now I'm very unhappy about what happened. Like, oh, well, why'd you decide to call me 2 years after you did that? Why didn't you call me 2 months before you did that when we had the documents to look at? I once met with a guy who signed himself into a lifetime of hurt because he wasn't adequately represented. Don't let one lawyer represent two people because they usually can't. What I mean by that is if you roll into your spouse's custody lawyer or your ex-spouse's divorce lawyer, whichever way we're going to talk about this, they probably have that person's best interest at heart. And while they may seem real nice and real friendly if you read the fine print on what you're signing, and obviously you're not going to be unhappy about it later unless you didn't understand or didn't read the fine print, and you may not have any idea what your actual rights are or what you're entitled to. And worse, one of your coworkers might have told you, oh, no, it always works that way. Just sign it. When really it doesn't ever work that way, but your coworker's an idiot. Get an attorney and get a consultation before you sign anything. And if another attorney, and this we just did a legal ethics on this, which is, if you got an attorney and they're a pro se person representing themselves is going to sign something, if that attorney tells you don't need an attorney or you don't want an attorney or why pay the expense of having an attorney look it over, they really can't do that. They're supposed to say to you, this is an illegal document and I can't advise you on it. In fact, you should probably get an attorney of your own choosing and have them advise you. Now, you don't have to do that, but I would strongly urge or recommend that you do that to protect yourself. And actually, to protect my own client, I usually urge the other side to do that. So keep that in the back of your head. I hate to rattle on and on and on about it, but it really makes me upset when you hear this and somebody says, oh, well, I just entered into this terrible deal because the other side's attorney thought it was a good deal for me. The other side. It reminds me of people that say, I didn't know. I thought the police officer, I didn't know he was going to arrest me when he questioned me about that crime. Really? You didn't? Jay, you're on WHP 580 with Carl Rominger.
Hi, Carl. Originally, I had called about the Supreme Court question to tell you it was probably Cagle, but I've been listening to your show on podcasts.
Okay.
I listen when I can on live, but I've done some work in the last couple of days and just listened to podcasts over and over. And I'm I don't know if it's central Pennsylvania. I'm not a native, and maybe I've just had some issues that other people have. And I'm kind of surprised at some people's ignorance of even simple legal, not that I'm a lawyer or they would know all the details, but I remember somebody called, does a power of attorney mean I have to pay, I'm responsible for somebody's debts?
Right.
Maybe, I guess, I've done power of attorney. I mean, I've been a power of attorney, maybe so I know. But even in civics classes that I had in the 60s and reading, it just seems to me people are very ignorant of basic principles, or at least a lot of the people that call in. And then they come to you with a problem when they should have gone to a lawyer in the first place. And because they can get you on the phone free, I guess.
Right. And actually, that's kind of my joke is somebody said, right, let's lift the curtain up here a little bit, Shane. Somebody said to me one time, well, you must have to prepare a lot for your show, to answer all those questions. And I said, well, sometimes I get some stumpers and ones I have to do some research on and some I know off the top of my head. I said, but the basic format goes like this. Here's my legal question. Do I need a lawyer? And the answer is yes, you recognize that you have a legal question and a legal problem, and you've called in, and the general answer is yes, you probably need a lawyer. And that's kind of, the hardest, the basic formula for answering a question on this show is yeah, you probably need a lawyer. Now, let me go backwards for a second. I find that even really intelligent people are sometimes ignorant of the law. So I remember representing a guy one time who made 150 G's a year, okay? Paid very well for what he did, technical kind of guy, had a wife with similar background and income. And he was all surprised that he couldn't qualify for a public defender for a minor for a minor criminal matter. And I'm looking at him thinking, you're making 300 G's a year in your family, you don't have any kids, and you wonder why you can't qualify for a public defender. But it's just a lack of experience or common sense.
Too much TV or what?
Yeah, I and you can't explain it. But at another level, it's that he never had to deal with law or anything legal, so he just...
Yes, but I remember somebody going through a divorce. And of course, I'd been through one at the time, too, at this point. And I remember they were going through this, it's amicable, we're using the same attorney. And I said, well, I would advise against that. I don't care how amicable it is.
Right.
It's by nature adversarial. Why would you, but people that would not fix their car, they take it to a mechanic, and I don't know if it's they don't trust lawyers, which,
Well, and there's a certain, let me explain it this way, too. We're one of those things, most people expect that when they walk through the door I'm going to get the Hoover out and suck the money out of your pockets, first of all. So that's one apprehension. Apprehension number two is, and I think a lot of my colleagues are historically responsible for this, they blather at you in legalese, and in the old days, throw some Latin at you, but never really explain to you what they're doing and why, so you never exactly leave feeling like you're sure what you're paying for. And I think number three, though, is just that people also tend to rely, and this goes for all aspects of their lives. I mean, there's people out there that get a rash, right? And what's the first thing they do? They ask their buddy, whoa, what should I do for this rash? I don't know, put vinegar on it. Then later the doc's like, why'd you put vinegar on it? Oh, Ted down the street told me to put vinegar on it, and he said it worked for him once.
Yeah. I don't know if it's the area. The one thing I think it's kind of interesting, I was going to say that the lawyers, when someone, you know what? I'm getting old, man. I just had it on the tip, but I
it's okay. No, but
that happens.
And I say this in all honesty, the hardest thing to do when you're a lawyer sometimes is help the client understand what you're doing for them.
I know what it is, and it reminded me because I went through this in divorce. Sometimes lawyers got to tell you what the law is.
Right.
I remember a lawyer. It was my divorce case, and I thought something was unfair. And this wasn't that I had this before, blah, blah, blah. And my lawyer was just telling me what my future ex-wife was entitled to legally, and it had nothing to do with emotion. And I people call, and it's almost like they really want a counsel or they really want a buddy,
a life coach,
but they don't want to hear, and they're disappointed that they're getting the facts.
Actually, I got hired by a guy one time who's facing a 5-year mandatory in jail, okay? And another lawyer calls me up and says, hey, I got a question for you. I met with that guy, too, he says. And I'm just trying to figure out why he hired you, because there's a 5-year mandatory, and I told him there's a 5-year mandatory. I mean, what'd you tell him? And I said, I told him there's a 5-year mandatory, and I know he met with you. I said, I had the advantage of being the second person to tell him that.
Yeah.
Didn't want to hear it the first time. The second time, he resigned himself to it, and we dealt with it. And by the way, he only did 2 years in jail.
Okay, well, that was just my comment, and thanks for the time. I do enjoy your show.
No, and I appreciate it. It's always interesting to hear some perspectives. And like I say,
I was doing a show at Albury. I'm an actor, and I was driving through Carlisle the other day and turned to the left, and there it was. There's your office. And
yeah.
So,
all right, my friend. Thank you very much.
I'm just going to come in there and ask you questions about Durgan. I'll tell you. Okay. Thanks a lot.
Durgan's exactly like he sounds. He's a great guy, but he's the same on the air as he is off the air.
Okay.
He's just an honest guy. All right.
Bye.
540-0580. See you after the break. Hey, welcome back. 540-0580. Carl Rominger answering your legal questions. Be sure and check out our new website, romingerlaw.com, for the law firm. You've got profiles for all the lawyers on there. Got some neat, spiffy pictures. It was made by 717 Studios. And by the way, I'm going to be giving away this half hour a couple gift certificates to callers for Rillo's Restaurant in Carlisle. I've got a couple of those to give away. So if you haven't made your Mother's Day plans yet, you can always do that. Rillo's. Let's look them up in the phone book. They're in Carlisle. They got some really nice Mother's Day stuff. I'm sure they could probably squeeze you in at this late hour. I don't know. But nonetheless, a couple of you I'll be giving gift certificates to. Skip, you're on the air.
Hey, how you doing, Carl?
Good.
Clarification in regard to district justices. Although they don't have to be lawyers, they do have to go to school they have to take a specific course, right, and pass it and take a test before they become district.
That's correct. They have so much time after they're elected or before they're elected to take the class and pass it, and it gives them a general overview of the job as well as the law as it applies at that level.
Okay, and then what if they had been a district justice before and were defeated and run again and are elected? Do they still have to go back and take the course again?
I don't think they have to go back and take the course again, but I think they have to stay up. They have to catch up on their updates.
Okay, so they would just have to maybe take the test, but not necessarily the course.
Yeah, and you know what? That's an interesting question, and I couldn't really tell you what the answer is. But I could tell you, I guess my thought on the matter was they probably would be able to pass it because it doesn't change that much from year to year.
Right. And is there a mandatory retirement age for the district justices also?
Yeah, I believe they have the same mandatory retirement age as compleas judges.
Which is what, 70?
70.
Okay, very good. Thanks a lot.
All right, Skip, thanks for being so patient.
All right, see ya.
540-0580. Patty. Hi, Patty.
Hi, Carl. I really like your show.
Thank you.
My question for you today is, I was wondering what the law actually says about bullying. Because, we hear that in the workplace, and you hear it a lot, the term thrown around, bullying. But what does the law actually say about it?
It doesn't say much. And what I mean by that is there are very few, quote, anti-bullying laws on the books, let alone specifically targeting that. So there's something called harassment by communication. There's the idea that, or threatening communication. So I can threaten you and be guilty of crimes. I can harass you, unwanted touching or disorderly conduct, those sorts of things. But they don't really fit real well with the classic concept of bullying, and they particularly don't protect against the more insidious type of bullying, which is done quietly, as opposed to, if you beat a kid up, right? If one kid beats another kid up at school or in a workplace, somebody punches somebody else, well, that's very easily dealt with. It's when, I see you come into the coffee room and I poke a hole in your cup or something like that, becomes hard to prove. But my point is, now there's no great tools out there. People talked about that, and I mentioned at the beginning of the show the idea that, I can. What are the restrictions on me as a boss? Can't I say horrible things to the people that work for me if I think it will help them do better at their job? And what do they have to do if I do it? If I want to bully Shane here today and say all kinds of bad things about him and his mom. He's like, what are you saying about my mom? He's from Perry County. But my point is, if you follow me, where do you draw those lines? And that's part of the problem, because in some work environments, they're famous for their, the bullies, where the boss just screams and yells and swears at people and throws things. And some people say it brings the best out in them, and other people say it causes them to have nervous breakdowns and they have to quit their job. So the answer is, I don't know whether there's any great definition of it. And at a certain point, of course, it may implicate speech. It may implicate the freedom of contract. And so I don't know where those lines are ultimately going to get drawn.
Okay. And what about cyberbullying?
Again, remember that mom that where was that? She pretended to be somebody and convinced the kid, caused the kid to commit suicide.
Right.
And there was no great fit on the law there. I think they used some communication type statute, but even that didn't even fit the crime very well.
Okay.
So there's not much out there.
Okay. Do you anticipate it getting to be more on the books?
Yeah, I do anticipate it, and then the courts are going to have to sort out what's the difference between free speech and bullying. We know, for instance, that targeted protests, like if I set up in your yard and just your yard and do things, are handled a little differently than if I do the exact same conduct in the public square, let's say.
Okay.
But where the lines are going to get drawn, I couldn't tell you, because it's just such a hard issue.
Okay. Well, thank you very much.
Yeah. Thank you.
Okay. Bye-bye.
So, think what was it? What was the coach? Knight, right? Wasn't he the famous Bob Knight, famous basketball coach, known for his unbelievable winning record and his unbelievable bursts of temper. And, maybe he's the exception, or maybe he's the guy that proves it's true that there's certain things to be said for people who have these draconian ways of running a team or a business organization, etc. On the other hand, there are just as many people who run successful organizations with completely different style. But again, I don't know what the law is going to come down on that. I personally, I'm always worried that we're raising a race of nitwits here in America, where we're teaching kids that everybody should hold hands and sing Kumbaya, and nobody can lose, and nobody can have an A, and nobody can have a B, and nobody can have a C, because the kids with A's will know they're smarter than the kids with C's. We want everybody to love each other. And in the meantime, the rest of the world's just learning, how to survive and how to be on top. And some American kid someday, when he's an adult, is going to look around and go, Oh, why do these people hate me? I can go on and on. That's not for today's show, but if I fill in for Durgan, or again, we'll talk more about the generation of wimps. Mike, you're on WHP 580.
Hi, Carl. How are you doing?
Good.
Good. Enjoy your program.
Thanks.
I have a question pertaining to whether or not sheriffs and or their deputies in the state of Pennsylvania are able to enforce traffic law.
Yeah, the short answer is in order to enforce traffic law, you have to have the traffic education or the equivalent training.
Okay.
And I know that, for instance, the Cumberland County sheriffs, just because I've seen the training regime, is slightly different from the police officers. They have like a half a credit less in traffic or something, and most judges have held that to be the equivalent.
Okay, so I'm assuming that would also pertain to Adams County probably as well.
Yeah, but you have to actually check and see what they had for their training, and that would be an issue. And number two would be the exact circumstances, because while sheriffs have ability to enforce the traffic law, their powers are a little bit circumscribed, and there's a whole series of cases dealing with that. I had a DUI not too long ago where the sheriff pulled a guy over, and it was probably an okay stop under the circumstances, but there is sheriffs have to. The short answer is sheriffs have a little bit of a disadvantage in some circumstances, whether they can stop somebody or not. But it's very minor.
Yeah, there's kind of. I'm kind of trying to make a decision here. I had April Fool's Day of all days. I had a deputy sheriff pull me over under the pretense of I had a license plate light out. And he told me at the time that I also had on high beam a headlight out, which I was unaware of. I was unaware of either one of them being out. And when I got to, and then this proceeded into a breathalyzer, et cetera, and a DUI. The BAC came back as .135. Now, the man was extremely congenial.
Mm-hmm.
But when I read the report that it came back for the hearing, he had mentioned in there that he was following me down the road, and the fact of the matter is he just kind of appeared out of nowhere. I'm assuming I know approximately where he was sitting at, about a half mile from where he stopped me. And I'm wondering, well, how did you know I had a headlight out if you were behind me? You know, there's a little bit of a contradiction there in his report, I thought. But the primary issue was, I know up until last summer there was an issue regarding whether or not they could make a stop.
Yeah, and as a general rule, they're going to be able to make a stop. The long answer is there's going to be some particulars that have to be looked into. And I'm not sure that the case law is completely settled, because the last couple of cases that come out are all Superior Court cases, if my mind's serving me correctly. And, of course, Superior Court case law is always subject to a little bit of revision or rescission by the Supreme Court down the road.
Mm-hmm.
Here's the big question. If this is a first offense DUI within 10 years?
Yes.
And first for lifetime?
Ever. Right, first offense ever.
Yeah, you're probably ARD eligible, which is a diversionary program, and so we have to then decide, do we want to risk the conviction or do we want to go with the diversionary program?
Yes, and I've been, matter of fact, like I say, this man was very congenial, and he more or less alluded to the idea that if you take, he more or less mentioned that this was going to be an option,
right,
to take the ARD, and that this would supposedly expunge after a year, which I'm seeing contradiction on the internet.
Well, it'll expunge, but it'll end up on your traffic record, on your vehicle record for 10 years.
That's the information I'm getting. It's kind of a strange dichotomy of law here.
Yeah, welcome to Pennsylvania. Mike, I got to go to break here, but if there's anything I can do to help you, just look me up, RomingerLaw.com.
Okay, thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Bye.
See you after the break. Oh, we were watching a little police stop right out the window here. Susquehanna Township Police got some poor sucker pulled over at the, what is that, a Turkey Hill over there? Yeah, it's the Turkey Hill parking lot. So if you can hear me on your radio, don't answer their questions. When they ask if you realize you were speeding or why they pulled you over, don't say, yes, I was going 27 miles over. That's called a confession. Let him tell you why he pulled you over. You don't need to tell him. And if they want, by the way, Susquehanna Township Police, those are the same guys that are on my video that you guys can watch on weekendappointment.com if you want to see it. Nice guys. Okay, let's see. Who's next? Kevin. What's going on? Kevin.
Hey, thanks for taking my call. I got a question. One of my friends and I, we want to get together and purchase a fishing boat.
Okay.
And we don't have problems with the details and things like that, but with the fractional ownership, I was worried more about potential liability for either of us if we were trailering it and we both were owners and somebody did something stupid and hurt somebody. And I didn't know if a lawyer could help us out on that or if it's too menial.
Well, the short answer is you certainly could create a whole, LLC, blah, 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 blah. But I guess one of you is going to need to, you're going to need to go get boat insurance anyhow. And then if each one of you, whoever's going to be towing it, should probably have insurance on the automobile, which includes maybe something for the towing as well.
Yeah, we definitely have to get insurance, but I didn't know if there was a way to set it up that if, let's say I was towing it one weekend and something happened, that he wouldn't be liable.
Yeah, the short answer is generally, for some reason in the wide world, everybody thinks that because you own something, you're somehow going to be responsible for somebody else's negligence. Okay. And so I hear this one all the time. They're like, Carl, my ex-wife has got the car, and she's going to have an accident. If she has an accident, I don't want to be liable. I want my name off the title right away. And I'm like, well, if your name's on the title, it doesn't make you liable. Now, if you let her drive it, or let's say your buddy's a known drunkard, and you let him tow the boat around, and if it's like one of my buddies from, let's say, Dauphin, they're all known drunkards. Okay, I probably am. Yeah, but in the seriousness, I mean, if I know the person has an impediment, doesn't have a driver's license, etc., or I literally know that they're 3 sheets to the wind when they get in the car and to tow the boat or do whatever, go out boating with somebody in it. And I allow them to do that, or I negligently entrust them with that, then I have a problem. But the mere fact that say you and I owned a car together and you registered it and you were driving it around, as long as I don't literally know what you're doing or know that you have some proclivity to do something, then I don't have any danger. It's your negligence. The fact that I own it or let you have it doesn't mean a hoot.
Okay.
But that's where insurance comes in handy, because to the extent that anybody ever might be reached, you're protected. And are you married, Kevin?
Yeah.
Okay, just make sure that boat is titled to just you and your buddy, or owned by you and your buddy, not by the marriage as well. And then even if they could ever reach you, they can't reach your marital property.
Okay.
Yeah, I wouldn't get too complicated about this.
Yeah, it's not going to be anything fabulous. It's just, we just want a kind of a fractional ownership, kind of like a timeshare boat.
No, I gotcha.
But okay, well that's all I want to know. I didn't want to go wasting lawyers' time
But I'm going to give you some free advice while you're on the air here, though. You ready?
Okay.
Ready for how this works? It's called Memorial Day, the 4th of July, and Labor Day. You better get a custody agreement out in place right up front, because he gonna be like, I want 4th of July because I'm taking the family to Raystown, and you're going to be like, whoa, I want the 4th of July. I was going to go. So just remember that. At fractional ownership of a boat, particularly more families involved, but nonetheless, holidays sometimes become the problem.
Yeah, we're going to get it figured out. It won't be a big deal.
Yeah,
I don't think.
You need a custody arrangement. All right, okay. My friend.
Thanks a lot.
I'm not kidding. The fractional ownership of boats always in the wintertime you take the boat from October to April. You take it. I don't need it. Come July, big fight. 540-0580, Carl Rominger answering your legal questions. Fran, you're on the air.
Hi, Carl. Thank you for taking my call.
My pleasure.
I wanted to call you for a while. By the way, I'm not too far away from this where it says Susquehanna Police stopped the gentleman. I'm on Progress Avenue, and I just made up my mind. I'm coming from a Holy Communion celebration, and seeing the family together and the grandmother, my neighbor, with her grandchildren was just great. And it reminded me of how long I wanted to call you about this, because my daughter-in-law won't let me see my grandchildren.
Ah.
And she chased us out of her house. It puts my son in a predicament And one time we didn't see them for about a year, and that really hurt. And I didn't want to put my son in the predicament, but one person will say, yes, you have grandparents' right, another person will say you don't. And in response to the gentleman that called about, why don't we just go to a lawyer? Well, I'm in a query. Do I have rights, even for an hour? I only used to get to see them for an hour. And you're probably wondering, well, what kind of fellow is my son? Well, I want him to have a fairly decent life, and he doesn't believe in divorce, and I wouldn't even want to see that because he's a very good father, and I wasn't one of these pushy in-laws, you hear all the jokes and all. But I wondered, even if I could get an hour a week or a Saturday or a Sunday or something, that's when he, takes care of the children while his wife works. So do I have any rights, Carl? It's an emotional subject. I didn't think I could get through this, but
right. No,
to do it.
The short answer on grandparents' rights are, yes, you have some rights. They're not great rights unless you've provided care to the child in your house for a year or more at a time.
No, she won't. She has an order that they can't come to her house.
Right. And if, however, there's a strong impediment with your child, and for some reason, so this is the weird thing. If your child has a disability that makes them not a good parent or somebody who can provide guardianship, you may be able to kind of get standing that way as well. The short answer is it's a long road to hoe, but yeah, you have some rights. And the worst case scenario, if you don't have rights, you can assert them through your child. Of course, that sometimes is the impediment. So I would need to talk to you off the air, but I certainly could help you figure that out, what your best strategy is.
Okay. Well, I would really appreciate that, Carl.
Yeah. Fran, you go to weekendappointment.com or romingerlaw.com and you can get in touch with us.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, and I wish I had a more specific answer for you, but it's so fact-specific. And under the new custody law, I'd have to analyze it as well, and I'm not completely comfortable working my way through the new law as I am with the old law in my head.
Mm-hmm. Doesn't seem fair, does it? We have so much love to give.
Well, you know what? I often think, and I think that someday a court will buy this argument, that if there's a loving grandparent out there who wants to see the kid, that shows the other parent isn't fit for not providing that connection to the child.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, there's an absolute duty to foster with the other parent, the non-custodial parent, but I think that you can make a strong argument that anybody who doesn't share the child's life with the extended family is a bad parent in and of themselves. I think that's a great argument. All right, I got to go.
Thank you, Carl.
Hey, Larry, contact me off the air. Guys, weekendappointment.com. Check out our wonderful new website at romingerlaw.com. And I just put up on Facebook a picture of that cop car out there harassing that poor innocent citizen who I'm sure did nothing. And if he hires me, he did nothing twice. And if he doesn't hire me, well, he's probably guilty as sin. All right, guys, I'll see you next week.